Not me. Think it's someone online. You got him? Everyone, and welcome to the Chatham Select Board meeting of May 9th, 2023. Let the record show the meeting started 5:31 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30, Section 20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as is possible. So our first item on our agenda this evening is to convene the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees for, I anticipate to be a fairly brief meeting, but I would like to convene the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board, so I will call a roll call here. Megan?
Present.
Mr. Nicastro?
Present.
Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Present.
Mr. Metters?
Present.
Mr. Bean?
Present.
And Mr. Dykens is present as well. And the meeting has been convened. I believe we have a Habitat for Humanity request for a construction completion date extension for the projects at George Ryder Road South, number 19 and 25, from May 23rd, shortly forthcoming, to July, the end of July, July 31st, 2023. And Gloria, do you have any comments with respect to this one?
I'm just going to give a brief overview for people who might be tuning in who didn't view the packet. Back in 2018, the Trust entered into a land development agreement with Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod to subdivide property at 11 George Ryder Road South and develop two single-family homes for affordable housing. The anticipated date of completion, which was confirmed in the land development agreement, was May 23rd of this year, and due to, as we all know, all of the implications of COVID-19 and supply chain issues and the difficulty finding laborers and workers and construction crews, they are requesting an extension from May 23rd for a couple of months until July 31st. Town Council has reviewed that, has opined that it's perfectly fine for them to make that request and perfectly fine if you choose to do so to grant that extension. And Town Council has worked up an amendment to the agreement, which is included in your packet. And you may have received an email today with a slightly modified version of that amendment, which also, in addition to changing the date of completion, changes the contact information because Habitat has a new attorney. And that's it. And I believe someone from Habitat is on the line, Wendy Cullinane, in case you have any specific questions.
Any comments or questions, Mr. Riley and or Wendy Cullinan? I see you're both online. Any comments at all for the? I think the extension is fairly self-explanatory. I gather there were supply chain issues and labor issues, so it's been pushed off a bit. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is. Thank you so much for having us tonight. And that's exactly right. There were those were our delays. I know we're coming right down to the wire here with our May extension. So we requested an extension until July. It's almost as a just in case. We're still working hard to get those families in their homes as soon as possible. And I know we've added actually a couple of extra work days this week to help with the completion of that project. And Bob Riley, do you want to hop in and add anything to the construction part of it?
Well, that pretty much states the case.
Yeah. Real
You've stated that.
Getting a real bad echo, Bob. And now you're on mute, so, okay. Well, thanks for your effort, Bob. Okay. Are there any questions for Wendy from the Select Board members? Mr. Metters?
Thank you. No, obviously, you want to get this project done as soon as possible to move forward with putting families into the project. But with the middle of summer ramping up and deliveries and all the other elements that twist into the summertime, is July 31st an adequate buffer? I mean, obviously, I think we're open to having a discussion about what timetable we could extend to. Obviously, if you don't have to go to that length, but is it a realistic buffer to do it within those extra 2 months?
Yeah, we're confident that is adequate. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Corey, good
You're
question.
welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, a motion to extend, please.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, thank
Second.
you. And we'll take a vote. Megan?
Megan votes yes.
Okay, Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Bean?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. And I thank you very much and good luck. Hopefully you get it done by the 31st. They're looking great over there. It looks good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for all your efforts. You guys do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your support. We
You bet.
appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
don't we have to also approve a change of a notification provision?
Hang
They
on one sec.
substituted a different attorney from previous attorney.
Sure, I'll have a motion, David.
I don't have any problem with it, but the agreement itself says you can change that notice provision with just another notice in accordance with the agreement. So I don't really think we have to approve that.
We good?
It was presented, I'm fine, either way. It was presented to us, and if they would like it, codified into the agreement, I'm
The
happy.
thing I did think that we had to approve was the execution of the agreement. That seemed in the memo to be a second recommended
It
action.
does say,
on our
execute the
part.
draft amendment prepared by town council.
Well, why don't
I accept-
why don't I offer a motion to approve the execution of the agreement, which includes the new notice provision?
Sounds good,
Okay,
Mr. Castro.
Mr. Shell,
If
Second.
you insist.
belt and
He
suspenders.
dots his i's and crosses his t's. Thank you, Mr.
No, he's
Castro.
the one that sends the minutes. That's the motion, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shell. And we'll take a vote. Megan?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Shereen?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
And Jeff says aye as well. Thank you very much, folks. Good luck. Thanks for all your
Thank
work.
you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll adjourn the Affordable Housing
Motion
meeting.
to adjourn?
Thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you. Megan Story?
Aye.
Mr. Castro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Bean?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Again, thank you, folks. Thanks for your time tonight. Okay, now we'll convene the Select Board meeting. We'll have a quorum. Mr. Nacastro?
Present.
Yes, Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Aye, present.
Yep, Mr. Metters?
Aye. Right here, present.
Thank you, Mr. Metters, and the chair, Mr. Dykens, is present as well.
Physically here, mentally.
Okay. First item of business is to accept or move and approve the minutes of May 2nd, 2023. We had very scant nits on this, I believe.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. Any other
Second.
any other suggestions, edits, anything? Okay, move the minutes. Mr. Metters,
Aye.
Mr. Shell,
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much. Next item is public announcements and agenda item requests. Any public, okay, we have a couple. Ms. Davis.
I have a public announcement. This is from the chair of the Chatham Community Housing Partnership. Tomorrow, they convene at 11 o'clock in the annex, in the small meeting room. They will be having their annual meeting, and Habitat for Humanity will be making a presentation. The chair invites any interested in housing, especially those involved with housing planning in Chatham, to attend. The Habitat model for housing is just one more type of housing development. For those familiar with the Habitat, you might be interested to learn some of their new programs, including a new housing design to accommodate higher density builds and new AMI limits. So she says all are welcome. It will be great for folks to be there in person so they can ask questions. And she wanted to make sure that everybody knew it was an in-person only meeting and that the meeting will be available on Channel 18 afterwards.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. Mr. Nacastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee met, at the end of which the Vice Chair observed that there were several water-related items on our to-do list for future board agenda items, and asked if those could be advanced. And specifically, there were 3 that were called to my attention, and they are as follows. The first was, it's listed as review awaiting Water and Sewer Advisory Committee recommendation. I assume that were related to the conservation restrictions, and we did receive, as you know, a report from the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee a few weeks ago with a matrix, and that has not been vetted and reviewed by this board, so I would ask if that could be placed on a future agenda in the near future. I won't invoke the 30-day rule because we don't know who's going to be making that determination in the future.
Well, I think collectively we'll make sure that one's there. That's an important one.
yes.
They worked hard on that, yeah.
Yes. Second one was water rates for households with a second irrigation meter installed. This was one that you had requested. It was referred to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, and they did meet and made a recommendation to eliminate one of the $35 charges. So that's pending before us for consideration as Water and Sewer Commissioners. The third was a request that was made by Select Board Member Davis, with whom I spoke today. It was entitled Water Conservation Committee / Working Group. It really was done in the context of our consideration of a whole lot of issues, the master plan for water and our conservation efforts. It was referred to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, so we could probably take that off the list, and pending their coming back to us with a report. They did indicate yesterday that at their June meeting, they are going to begin consideration of the master plan. And we'll be hearing back from them at some point. And Ms. Davis is agreeable to this. So those are my, that's my
it's good
agenda
that-
item
It's
request.
good that master plan has not fallen off their radar. That's an important piece of business, but it's
Yes.
also that's a heavy lift. I mean,
Yes.
they're going to, that's a,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, thank you, Dean, very much. And I believe, Ann, is your hand up? Ann Ryan?
Yes,
Again.
thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, I have agenda item request / public comment on the business agenda. In the spirit of bringing the community together after the defeat of Article 18 at town meeting, I propose that the town create a task force to convene, share ideas, and present a recommendation to the Select Board on how to effectively find a new home for the COA Chatham Center for Active Living. Chatham is blessed with an abundance of intelligent, resourceful, and creative individuals who, when united, can surely find the common ground needed to build a project we can all be proud of. Please seriously consider this proposal so that we can begin the healing process and swiftly develop a solution that addresses the needs and concerns of our entire community. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ann. So that'll certainly get on the agenda list. Thank you very much. Okay, any other public announcements and/or agenda item or requests this evening? Okay, on to our public comments on our business agenda. I appreciate that, Ann. We have a seasonal closure of Bucks Creek this evening, which is a standard item. We have a one-day special alcohol permits by Melissa Miller, Local Color Art Gallery. I'll recuse myself on that one. I believe with Melissa Miller, Ms. Davis will recuse herself on that one. Puritan Cape Cod as well. Then the use of Veterans Field for fireworks. I see Mr. West here this evening to represent the anglers. And then we are going to do a download, or I should say a review or a discussion on the annual town meeting of last Saturday. So that being said, I see
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
I see we have a hand raised, a guest. Guest. I'm recognizing guest.
I'm Gloria Freeman.
Gloria. Okay, hi, Gloria.
Perhaps- Hi, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a question about item 4, 2023 annual town meeting. Perhaps you could answer this now. I've had several people ask me, what happens at Thursday's election if ballot question 1, debt exclusion for the Center for Active Living passes, or if it fails? My understanding is it is moot, but I'd like to know if that's correct. So what happens if it passes, and what happens if it fails?
So I first will turf it, Gloria, off to our resident attorneys, and after that, we'll turf it off to town council if the resident attorneys take a pass. But I think I know the answer, but Mr. Nicastro has his hand up, and he'll opine or
Well,
weigh in, and then I haven't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest you might want to ask the town manager as well.
Yeah.
She and I talked briefly about this yesterday, and I recall we have some precedent where town council advised with respect to an item in the past where the vote on a ballot question relative to, I think, a borrowing item, I don't remember what it was, occurred prior to the town meeting where the vote took place to approve that by 2/3. Based on that, if my memory serves, and I think Jill agrees with this, that if the vote on the 11th is in the affirmative, that continues to have some viability if there were to be a future town meeting. But I don't know whether that town meeting has to occur within the current fiscal year or the current calendar year. That's as much as I recall on it.
Off to Jill. Ms. Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Both the town clerk's office and our office had quite a few questions about this. So I reached out to town council Costello. He's not on this meeting, but I can read to you and email, make it publicly available. So it is, as Select Person Nicastro had noted, with some more specifics. So Pat wrote to me, a debt exclusion ballot question can be submitted to the voters before or after town meeting authorization of the debt/appropriation of funds. Thus, if the COA ballot question number 1 is approved by the voters on May 11th, the town has a, quote, reasonable time, end quote, thereafter to again seek the project debt authorization/appropriation by a 2/3 vote of town meeting. Note that the post-ballot debt authorization/appropriation by town meeting would have to be for the same purpose project as approved by the voters in the ballot question.
Right, okay.
So there's not a specific time period to come back. There are, in different cases, that it would have to come back before the tax rate is set, but for this debt authorization, it seeks to come back at a reasonable time. And I believe that would likely come back to the select board.
Okay, that's useful information. Okay. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Jill. Okay. If there aren't any other comments on our business agenda, I'd like to move forward to the seasonal closure of Bucks Creek on May 15th. This is an annual item, given the warmth and the number of people down in that area. We typically do close Bucks Creek this time of year, after Mr. Bergstrom's gone down there and wiped it out. No, I didn't say that. Anyway, I don't know if Renee is online. Hi, Renee, there you are.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon to the select board. Yes, this is the first of our seasonal closures, and this is for Bucks Creek, and that would occur on May 15th with your approval.
Okay, now, I'm sure it will be approved. We usually do read this, and I would prevail upon our clerk here, Mr. Shell, to read this. We typically do read them out loud.
Shellfish Rules and Regulations, May 9, 2023, closed, effective May 15, 2023. The waters and flats of Bucks Creek, north of a line across the mouth of the creek and east of a line across the mouth of Cockle Cove Creek, are closed to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shell. I do believe we do vote this, so we're approving the closure of Bucks Creek. I'll go around the horn here. Mr. Metters.
Approve.
Mr. Shell.
Approve?
Yep. Ms. Davis.
Approve.
Okay. Did you want a motion?
I approve, but we didn't have a motion.
Why don't you make a motion, Mr.
I'll
Nacastro?
offer a motion,
There you
and
go.
I'll second it.
Okay,
I
thank
vote to
you.
approve.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Davis?
Approve.
Mr. Shell?
Approve.
Mr. Meadows?
Approve.
And the chair approves as well. Thank you very much. Okay. On to some one-day special alcohol permits. We have the first one from Melissa Miller for 193 Main Street, Chatham, Massachusetts. I see Ms. Davis is recusing herself, so any background, Sean, at all? I see, oh, there's Missy right here. Missy, would you like to? Hi, how are you? So why don't you just let us know what you're doing down there at 193 Main Street?
Yeah, okay. I'm really excited. We're doing a book launch party for my book that's releasing on the 31st of this month. So the book launch party is on June 3rd from 4 to 7 at the Big Green Building. And yeah, we would like to serve wine and beer there. It's going to be really fun. There's going to be local vendors and Chatham harvesters will be there serving food. And yeah, yay, you should all come.
Okay, Missy, thank you. Any questions for Missy and for the application? Mr. Nacastro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Shauna. It says in the application that all alcohol will be served outside to the southern end of the building. Is there a concern? Does that have to be fenced or roped off?
That area, if I remember correctly, is kind of walled off from the street, if you will. There's some screening, and the backside, I think, actually has a stone wall, so it'd be enclosed.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, anything
Yeah,
else?
and it would actually,
Go ahead, Missy.
sorry, so it would actually be closer to the building itself, like the back of the building itself, if that makes sense, sort of to the side of it. So it will be, it's not near the road or anybody else's property.
Okay. Thank you. I move approval.
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. Okay, we'll go around the horn. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Mr. Meadows?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much. Okay, on to the next one. Corey, I'm going to let you do this one. I'm going to recuse myself. Thank you, Missy. I'm going to recuse myself.
All righty. So next on our agenda is a consideration request for a one-day special permit for wine, malt, beverages only, local color gallery, 1652 Main Street, from May 19th, on May 19th, 2023, from 4 to 8 p.m. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm requesting a one-day liquor license, wine and beer, to celebrate the opening of our gallery this year, and we're going to celebrate our opening with a book signing by Amy Dykens of her new book called Beaches. And our first day open and will be from 4 to 8 on the 19th of May.
Very nice. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Nacastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Julie. Just a question. Is the alcohol going to be served only indoors, or will it be outdoors?
It'll be indoors.
Okay. And is it for adults, or what steps will be taken to prevent underage sale? Are you going to card people, or just?
What steps?
Yeah, are you going to be, is it adults only, or?
Mostly elderly people will be there, and my son will be manning the bar,
Okay,
so
all right,
it's pretty close quarters.
okay, thank you.
Ms. Davis.
I move to grant a one-day special permit for wine and malt beverages only for Friday, May 19th, 2023, from 4 to 8 p.m. at 1652 Main Street, Chatham, to Julie Eldridge Dykens on behalf of Local Color Gallery.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any further comment? All right, Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
And I say aye.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now we'll take a brief pause as our chair returns to the podium.
Okay, thank you, Corey. The next one-day special alcohol permit is for Puritans of Cape Cod on May 19th at 573 Main Street. I gather Puritan's been working hard on a refurb of their place, or I should say their store. Anybody from Puritans online this evening that would like to speak or not? Anything to add, Shauna, to this application?
You're absolutely correct. This is to reopen, if you will, after the renovations in the store. But it's pretty straightforward, wine and malt only, 5 to 7 on Friday, the 19th.
Okay. Same night as local color, but other than that, it's great. Okay, motion, please.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I move to grant a one-day special permit for wine and malt beverages only for Friday, May 19, 2023, from 5 to 7 p.m. at 573 Main Street, Chatham, to Andrea MacArthur on behalf of Puritan Cape Cod in Chatham.
Thank you, Mr. Shell.
Second.
Thanks. Okay, let's take a vote. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Have fun, Puritans. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful. All right, the next item on our agenda is the use of Veterans Field for fireworks on Sunday, July 2nd, 2023. And here to present, kind of has been an annual deal here now, getting close to it, Steve. Steve West from the Anglers. Welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Steve West, president of the Chatham Athletic Association, and we run the Chatham Anglers summer baseball team. And as you said, Jeff, Mr. Dykens, we're here to request the select board approval of holding the fireworks show for the second annual time this summer on the same day, July the 2nd, as it was held last year. This year it's a Sunday instead of a Saturday. Just as a little bit of background, you guys are going real quick, and I like that. I'm glad I didn't come in any later. We are co-sponsoring this with significant financial help from a number of local businesses, including Chatham Bars Inn, Chatham Candy Manor, Chatham Cookware, the Chatham Clothing Bar, Chatham Jewelers, Mahi Gold, Chatham Chamber of Commerce and Merchants Association. And I'm hoping for a few more sponsors to join our cause, because the fireworks went up significantly this year. Essentially, the show is going to be the same as last year's show. We're using the same fireworks company, North Star Fireworks, that was used last year and is used every year at the first night celebrations. We expect the fireworks will begin about 9 o'clock, last about 20 minutes as usual. The viewing areas and barricades will be set up in the same fashion and format as they were in previous years. We have received endorsements from both the Chatham Police Chief, Mike Anderson, and the Chatham Fire Chief, Justin Tavano. And we have been before the Parks and Rec Commission and received unanimous approval from them too. Prior to the fireworks going off, the event will kick off at 6 p.m. We do have children's entertainment lined up, hopefully, or not hopefully, expected to be balloon making and face painting. Then we will again bring in Dan Clark, the singing trooper, at around 8 p.m. to do a set that will lead us right into his set will conclude with the national anthem, and then the fireworks will follow immediately thereafter. So that's kind of my spiel. I'm hoping that you all are in favor of holding that second annual event.
Okay, any questions for Mr. West on the fireworks on July 2nd? Sounds like a blast.
Second.
Okay. Sounds like a blast, okay. I didn't get a chuckle the first time. I'm going to try again.
We didn't hear you down this end.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
The chair says aye as well. Have fun, Steve.
I do have one other thing to say, that this is the 100th year anniversary of the Cape Cod Baseball League and the Chatham franchise. It wasn't always the Anglers. And we will be holding a celebration, which I'm working with some of the town folks, and you guys will all be invited. And it's going to be in the middle part of July. You'll get official invitations. So looking forward to having that as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That certainly sounds like fun. 100 years. Okay, our last agenda item this evening is a revisit, or I should say a reaction and a review or discussion of the town meeting on Saturday the 6th. I know we have a few folks online that may want to weigh in as well. I'm actually going to take the opportunity to just kick this one off. I rarely do that, but I do have actually quite a few comments on this town meeting, and then we'll circle around the board here. This was in some way, shape, or form a pretty historic town meeting. With electronic voting, which I thought was great, and it wasn't perfect, but I thought it was great. I really thought it was slick, and, anyway, I have comments there going forward, but I really did think it was great. A massive overstatement of the obvious, to have a vote that, misses by one vote twice is certainly historic in and of itself. And a massive overstatement of the obvious, we certainly, in our democracy, be it local, regional, or national, every vote does indeed count. And I'll leave it there. Every vote counts. You look in the mirror and you think about who I knew that might have, should have been there that wasn't, and you just keep going back and review it kind of in a movie, going back and back. It's kind of too bad. But anyway, I do have some constructive criticism that I don't want, especially our staff and our team, to take the wrong way. It's not meant to disparage. It's just, if we can't look in our rearview mirror and have some critical comment, then we can't learn and we can't improve. So in that light, I bring some comments forward. The audio for the select board, I think to a T, and perhaps with the finance committee, was very difficult. There were times when I literally did not know what people were saying. And to be there and not knowing who's saying what and why, and the tone of it was very difficult. Well, for me, I mean, I'm older, admittedly, but I don't have bad hearing, and I could not hear. So that is a major criticism by me, and obviously other folks will weigh in. And so I don't know whether we changed vendors this year, whether the speakers were, I don't know what happened. But for us up there, for me, I couldn't hear. At times I couldn't hear the moderator. So it was very difficult, and I was two seats away from the moderator. So that was tough. Having it Saturday morning, 9:30. I'm not so sure I'd vote for it again. We had a great turnout. I mean, needed 900 votes. I got 900 folks, but we had 882 at one point. But I'm not sure that the reason we did it came to fruition. I think it kind of backfired on us. I didn't see a lot of the younger folks that were involved in Chatham 365. And again, I'm not disparaging anybody or calling anybody out, but that committee actually really did make a request to have, and we tried it. And I don't think I'd vote for it again. I think I would have it. I think sports got in the way. I think familiar responsibilities, young folks' programs and stuff perhaps got in the way of younger folks being there. So, and then I heard from voters themselves on the electronic voting, good and bad. I'm not sure whether the crowd could see the numbers behind us. Obviously, we had to turn around to see it, but it would be neat to have that down in front of the select board and in front of the finance committee so they can kind of see the results without going crazy. And then also the scribe transcribing the comments would be extremely useful to have in front of the select board and in front of the finance committee if we could pull it off, so that we do know in real time if there are audio problems. We do know in real time what's being said. As nuanced and, just at times it was just you couldn't hear. On the voting, I had 3 or 4 complaints from folks that were in the back of the room with late arrivals and confusion about how the devices worked from late arrivals. I think folks that got there on time, that the moderator did a great job going through rehearsals and educating folks as to what the deal was, but folks that got there late were not so informed. And the one theme that I heard, and then I'm going to hush in a bit, but the one theme I heard was that the moderator should have said with more emphasis, now the voting is open. Vote now. We kind of knew that it was open because I heard him say that, and I could look back and it was open, and then you could press. Then the other major thing in the electronic voting was waiting for okay. I think folks, if they didn't see okay, kept pressing, and I heard this from 2 or 3 people, that they didn't see okay all the time. So I think there was a bit of confusion, again, especially for late arrivals to the town meeting, which brings up another subject for me, which is late arrivals. Late arrivals ought to be shepherded through the main entrance that's monitored with instruction there, rather than coming through any other. I mean, town meeting starts at 9:30, perhaps, and I'm throwing this up open for comment, but perhaps late arrivals need to come through the front door. And then the other thing I heard was, meeting started when there were tons of people still outside, and they perhaps did not hear the instructions and the early instructions on the voting, the electronic voting, et cetera. And then, I'm gonna stop there, other than just deeply disappointed in a one vote loss twice. Deeply disappointed. So I'll stop there. I'm gonna weigh in probably at other times with comments, but I wanted to get those off my chest, if you will, kind of out of the gate, which I rarely do. Mr. Metters.
No, just some general comments. I mean, I think it's safe to say there's never going to be a perfect day and time for town meeting. We're going to try to finesse it as best as possible. I do think the changing of early morning Saturday, was a recommendation from Chatham 365, and we've given it a try. At this particular last meeting, I don't think the younger turnout was quite there. The impact in comments I received from, I guess I just turned 50 this year. So where am I? I'm not a younger person anymore. Or am I still a younger person?
You're a baby.
I'm a baby. Okay. So
You're a baby.
At some point, I can't see I'm a younger person. So anyway, there are sports. There are, people are going to work. Their businesses are opening up. There's graduation parties. There's all kinds of other events. But, if we roll it back to Monday or Tuesday evenings, there's also going to be some other hurdles for people to attend. So we're going to try to we'll discuss it, and we'll make the best recommendation we can moving forward. Obviously the turnout was quite high, and it was quite high until after the bigger ticket items, and then as that we passed through those agenda items, we could see the voting drop and drop and drop and drop and drop. So I do think we want to maybe reflect on where we want to place items on the agenda if we're trying to keep people present, or, like I say, there's going to be no perfect formula for creating this. The remote voting, I think, still has a couple little wrinkles to move out. I think it went relatively well. Actually, it was better than I expected. I do think there were people that when you hit the button, the okay didn't go right away. There were a couple times like I was pushing 1 or 2, and I was pushing it too early, so it didn't have to, it didn't hit until a couple times. So I do think we're just going to get used to that. But once that is another town meeting under our belts, I think that will be more efficient moving forward. We went through it in a relatively decent amount of time for a lot of articles. Obviously, the consent agenda, I support the consent agendas because I do think we can take some relatively straightforward items and take care of them in one vote. So I think that's been an effective tool for us in the last couple town meetings. So I'll continue supporting, reviewing, and using that to some extent. But it was nice to see a lot of people present. The only other, and I had a brief conversation with the town manager. I don't think we have a whole lot of wiggle room as far as, changing town meeting too. We can change the day and the time, but basically we're getting budget set up and everything else that is involved getting ready for town meeting. We could roll it back maybe a week or two, but we really don't have a lot of wiggle room as far as the time of year for having a town meeting. So we have to reflect on if a better day or better timetable makes more sense. Maybe it's a Saturday at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Who knows? But we can discuss that. We can get input from people and try to make the best educated decision moving forward, because the turnout was very, very high. I've grown up in this town. I've seen very low town meeting turnouts, and I've seen it very high. With obviously the Monomoy regionalization. So I think the turnout was fair. We had decent weather. Maybe that worked against us because it was too nice of a day to be inside. And on a side note, I'd love to get some better circulation for that room because it got a little stuffy in there and toasty. But we can figure that out somehow. But we've identified the issues. We can work with the issues, and it was so much fun. I'm sure we're going to do it next year. So those are just my general thoughts for the moment.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Mr. Schell.
Yeah, let me start by saying, I want it, just for the record, of course, I'm sorely disappointed by the result with Article 18. Let me put that to one side. I thought that for what was the first time with a very new process things went extraordinarily well. There are always going to be people for whom, they struggle with electronics and the kind of things that are new, whether, a lot of people don't have a cell phone. Those are all things that I think, notwithstanding their existence, we did pretty well. There are, I certainly, I don't want to say I endorse the comments that Jeff and Corey have made, but certainly I recognize that there is a basis for those comments to have been made, and there are things that I think we ought to be looking at to improve next year. With respect to the issue of the time and date of the meeting, I find it interesting that as I recall, the working group that decided to purchase the electronic voting devices did some background research and concluded that if we bought 800 of those little devices, we'd be more than covered for whatever the experience had been, save the regionalization of the schools several years ago, that 800 was kind of the top end. And the number, I think the largest vote we saw was 882. So from my perspective, before we go saying, well, let's try Monday night and see if we can get more people, I guess I would say let's do a little homework, more homework, and figure out what the data tell us about evenings versus Saturday mornings. And in terms of how many people showed up and who, I'm not looking to give any assignments here, but I know that it is possible to ascertain, what the breakdown in age was in attendance. And maybe we ought to have that and take a look at it and see if what is anecdotal for people who know the town well, that maybe there weren't so many young people. I don't go a lot of places in Chatham where I see a lot of young people, so I don't know. Maybe they didn't show up, but maybe we just didn't see them. I don't know. I would say a couple of things in terms of the mechanics. The one thing that, and there may be logistical problems with this, but I know that the system allows there to be a screen which identifies every clicker by number and the fact that it has voted. And if I'm not mistaken, how it has voted. I think if we had a big, huge, jumbotron up there that had little boxes with those numbers in it that indicate that people, A, have voted, and B, how they voted, and they can look up there and confirm that their vote is recorded, that might eliminate some of the problems that people had with, being assured or not assured based on whether they saw an okay on the device itself. Other than that, I guess I would also say this was experimental going forward. If we have a very controversial item like Article 18, I would be inclined to say let's extend the voting period to the point where people are pounding the table and saying, damn it, let's close the voting and see what the count is. I thought that in many cases there was a little bit of a quick close. I am by no means suggesting that anybody was cut off. I'm just saying it's more important to give people assurance that everybody had time to vote and that there weren't some people out there that were left. Those are the things that I think would really help if we can look for those. But I think it's a discussion that we have over the next year and hopefully can make some improvements that will eliminate some of those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Schell. Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Jeff. I wanted to start off just to highlight some of the successes we did have at town meeting. especially in the way of housing. Stepping Stones moved, 127 Old Harbor Road moved. They both passed, and $1 million for the Housing Trust. And I think we should be proud of that. And efficiently, the child care and the family support programs did. The budget passed with no discussion, and we were able to fund some water stuff. I think those are good successes. Disappointingly, I'm disappointed in the COA vote. It certainly, was it wasn't a big law. I mean, it didn't lose by much. And so that gives me faith there's a lot of people that do support our older adults and seniors in Chatham. Some of the things that I did observe, like you, Jeff, I have incredible hearing, and I was having a really tough time understanding things, and it felt extremely uncomfortable. And I think it wasn't easy to hear at all anybody, with us in the room. I didn't hear from the other side how people heard in the audience. That seemed to be quite a problem, and I don't remember that happening like at any other time, and so it was kind of a little surprise. Some of the things discussing the attendance issues, there were a lot of younger people in the auditorium. There were some folks in there that were younger. But yes, I think any day is a challenge for anybody to show up. Obviously, work and life get in the way. Especially children can have little upsets, and all of a sudden the babysitting thing doesn't work out. So I'd be open to what Mike has said, to look at some of the data and really look at what would be helpful. I thought that there was, I really would love to hear from the town clerk, the moderator, and our IT guy, Craig, on some of the things that they observed as far as the voting mechanisms were concerned. I did get an email from a citizen that was one of the clerks. I had run into her over the weekend. We were talking about town meeting, and I asked her to send me along some of her observations. Some of them were basically, it was pretty funny because she basically says, people, when they were dropping off the devices, stated they either loved them or they totally disliked them. So I think that, that can go either way. There was a bit of concern for some folks about an area within the gym that you first entered that appeared to be a dead spot. And I think that they were resolving it by switching out some of the equipment as quickly as possible. There was some questions from folks about, security of the voting mechanisms after they dropped them off. Some folks were saying, there was some other concerns. It's all in an email that's been sent around to all of us. The quorum. When we reach the quorum, the moderator starts the meeting and just tries to be timely about it. There were some folks that were concerned about that when there was a lot of people still trickling in. It was, but if you listen to the moderator, he was sort of moving things along slowly in the beginning just to sort of help that situation go as easy as it can. One of the things that I thought, and this is a moderator thing, it's not up for me to decide, but what I did notice is, moving the question, if that took a little more time on the voting mechanisms than if it had been a voice vote and then gone to the actual vote with the mechanism. So those are my observations. I think I have fairly articulated some of the concerns. There were some others here. I think some people didn't understand the concept of open meeting. I've heard this a lot from folks, why can't we just vote from home? And as you go through and explain the process of an open town meeting and that motions can change and everything like that, people get it. But people are used to just clicking something and being done. So maybe we work a little harder in trying to encourage people to town meeting. Maybe there's some incentives that we can add on to our town meeting experience. And but I was really, it was wonderful to see a lot of the townspeople out to support. some of the things that passed and out to debate the issues. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Nacastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to speak randomly here, topic by topic, but let me start with the substance of the meeting. Overall, I thought if you put aside, and it's hard to put aside, the Center for Active Living article, with which, the result of which I was as disappointed as the rest of the board because I favored it. It was a very successful town meeting in terms of adopting most of the substantive articles on the warrant, especially the financial articles, as have been mentioned, the water articles, the housing articles, except for 127, which I disagreed with, but that's all right. That's democracy. I won on Article 41. I was happy with that. But when you look at the budgets, all the budgets, the transfer station, the library, the capital budgets, this was a very successful meeting, I think. As far as the failure of Article 18, as I said to the Council on Aging Board yesterday, it's a lesson in democracy. Every single vote counts. And if you really feel strongly about something or against something strongly, you need to show up and vote. With respect to the logistics, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I commend the moderator for the way he conducted the meeting. This was the first time with electronic voting, and I very much liked the electronic voting. I also would encourage the moderator to follow his stated instincts to mix in voice voting, as Shireen was just saying, when you had something that was not controversial or when you were calling the question. It's unfortunate, I think, that at the request of a particular voter, which was shared, I guess, by the body because the moderator put it to the body, that we deviated from that in the afternoon. I think the meeting took an additional 30 or 35 minutes longer than it needed to have. I share everything that has been said about the acoustics. I was sitting next to Shireen, and multiple times I would ask Shireen, what did that person say? And that person was often the moderator. I couldn't hear the moderator. And Shireen would respond, I couldn't hear it either. And I don't understand that because we've been in that room numerous times, and I've never had that experience. And I have heard that the Finance Committee members had the same problem. There was a problem with the visuals because we had the screen behind us, and those of us who were up there, I couldn't make out the numbers. I couldn't make out the statement as to whether an item passed or failed. And I had a conversation with Jill yesterday, and I suggested that that particular screen, which was about the size of that, maybe it's bigger, be placed in front of the panel so that we could see it, and get a really large screen and put it up behind us so that the folks in the auditorium could see it, because I'm not sure that people that were sitting up in the gallery could read that sign from way back there. I don't know. I haven't asked anyone, but it seems to me it would be difficult. And perhaps we should also have a second screen in front of us which shows the transcription of comments. So those are constructive comments. This was the first time with this type of voting. And Mike mentioned the possibility of having a really large screen that shows whether a vote has been cast or not. I will say, Jill told me yesterday that of the 800 devices that we bought, every single one was returned, and there were only 3 of the rented ones that initially didn't show up. I don't know if they're still missing, but I'm sure our chief of police is looking for those.
Well, I'm sure he isn't, but nonetheless, just so the voters know, it's $30 a device, so when they're lost. But I think that ours were returned because they were on the lanyard, and the ones that we had rented for the event did not have it.
With respect to the long line, we were told it was out to the street at one point early on. And who knew this in advance? We didn't know how many people were going to show up. Maybe when we have an item on the agenda as controversial, as contested as Article 18, we might want to think about adding another table with checkers. We had, I think, 2 tables with 4 checkers, which usually works, but maybe we need another one. As far as the timing of the meeting, I didn't see who was in the auditorium, so I don't know what the age demographic was in there. But when I looked out at the audience, it didn't seem much different from what we've had in the past. And I'm going to think long and hard when we vote in September about whether to do this on a Saturday morning in May. I think we should get the data. I really do.
Yep.
And I do think when we had the meeting in June in Veterans Field, I think I saw more younger people. May is a tough month for a whole lot of reasons, as everybody knows. But although on the other side of the coin, if we have it on an evening and it's a really long agenda, then you have to think about going into a second evening. Whereas if you do it on a Saturday, as we've seen 3 or 4 times now, although we did have to go into a Sunday one time, you can pretty much think you're going to get it all done in one day. So I will just say one other thing about item 18, and I don't think we're going to be making any determinations tonight. I was asked at the Council on Aging, what's the select board going to do about the Council on Aging? And I said, well, tune in tomorrow night and watch us debrief, as you guys did yesterday. I think as a town, we have to proceed very wisely and very providently. I don't know where it's going. Otherwise, we're going to risk that we're not going to have a Council on Aging for another generation, a new Council on Aging center for another generation. So I just point that out. People have various ideas. I think we all have heard them in the last few days. So I had a good conversation over the weekend with a former member of this board, and that individual had the same sort of observation I did. Disappointed in the result on Article 18, but overall looking upon the result of the meeting substantively as a positive result, and really liking the electronic voting.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Mr. Shell, then I've got a couple follow-ups as well. Mr. Shell.
Thank you. And this is just a follow-up based on what that my colleagues have said. I thought, and this varies obviously for a lot of reasons meeting to meeting, but I thought the meeting went extraordinarily efficiently. I thought the moderator did a very good job in what in certain circumstances was a difficult situation. But most importantly, so many people speak to me about, I'm not going to stay for 9 hours or 8 hours or go over to a second day. I think one of the things, none of these things is a perfect solution. But one of the things that I think can contribute is if we can streamline the process, and the electronic voting devices help enormously. Some judgment on the part of the moderator, which obviously is up to him, but some judgment as to whether to do electronic votes or voice votes to move things along. The more rapidly, thoughtfully, of course, deliberately, of course, but the more rapidly we can work through an agenda and get to the end, I think that will help in terms of getting people to come, and perhaps will make for less of a difference between Saturday and weekday evenings. But I think that we ought to have that in our toolbox as we go forward.
Yeah, well said, Mike. Just to follow up, and this is the moderator's purview, but having the moderator have some voice votes when he knows there's going to be unanimity, and then going to electronic vote is no different than when we had paper, and he would ask for, would do a voice vote, and then folks he'd sometimes say, does anybody want to do a paper vote? Sometimes that would happen, sometimes it wouldn't. But then if we wanted a paper vote on something, we'd do a paper vote. It's no different. So I defer. He's an experienced moderator. He's done this for decades. So I defer to his instinct, because he has good instincts up there, and a very difficult job. And speaking of whom, we have him right here. Bill, would you like to comment? Well, you're welcome. Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll try to be relatively brief because you heard me for 5.5 hours on Saturday, so I don't think you want to do that again. I thank you for your gracious comments. It was, despite certain outcomes with which I understand you're unhappy, it was an extremely good turnout. I think it was the second highest in our history, 922. Julie is here and she can correct me, but I think we had 922 people. Second only to the regionalization vote in 2010. The time of day, the month for that matter, is totally up to the select board. I would observe that there is, as has been said, no perfect time. There are people who work during the evening. There are people who can't stay out at night. There's some suggestion that some segment of our population doesn't like to drive at night at all. My own sense is that daylight meetings are useful, and I recognize that people have other commitments, but it's one day per year. It's an important commitment, but you know, we had 922 people make that important commitment, and I think it's, as I said, there's no perfect time, but I think we did very, very well in terms of having people show up. As someone, I think Shireen observed, I did try to go slowly because I knew people were checking in. By the same token, at the beginning of the meeting, but by the same token, we had over 100 people there when I got there at 8:30. And by 9:30, they were ready to proceed. So on those occasions, you know, we try to start promptly regardless of the line, but there was probably 20 or 25 minutes of back and forth. I recognize that there was some confusion in regard to how the clickers worked. I did try to repeat it a couple of times. I will try to do better than that, but again, it was a first for all of us. And I appreciate what I think is a consensus of your board, that I exercise judgment as to when we're going to have electronic votes and when we're not. My inclination is to do that because, you know, all in favor say aye, all opposed say no, is faster than even a 20 or 30 second clock. So with that, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate the suggestions. I did see the email that Shireen referenced, that some people don't understand the concept of town meeting is something in which we will all work and continue to work. It is an important legislative enterprise by the voters, and I think it works well. And as I've said on many occasions, town of Yarmouth, 15 or 20 miles away from here, has got 20,000 voters. They have difficulty getting 100 people to show up at a town meeting. We have 5,500 people, and we had nearly 20% of them show up. So I think we do well in Chatham, but with your help and that of the voters, we'll try to do better. I'll be happy to try to respond further.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any follow-up comments for Bill or with Bill? Okay. Julie Smith, would you like to weigh in just on your observations of the day? Julie? Hi, Julie.
Absolutely. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I agree with Bill. I think it went very well. I think Bill forgot to count he and I in the total. We actually had 924 people. And he's right, it's our second largest. So it was a great turnout. It was, I heard good feedback about the clickers. People were very happy with the aspect of privacy. A lot of people were much more comfortable being able to just vote with the clicker, not have, you know, everyone else seeing what their vote was. It's a new process, so of course there were bugs that needed to be worked out. The challenges, there were challenges. People, I think once they get used to the clickers, they'll be more patient with the clicker and with the process. A lot of people were pushing the button multiple times, were wandering around, possibly walking into a dead spot, going into areas that they had been told probably wouldn't have a great range. And then, of course, they're in the range where the router isn't going to pick them up, and then they were upset that it wasn't being counted. It's new. We're going to get used to it. I thought it was great. It was much quicker than a hand count, and people question the results, whether it's an individual counting the cards that are held up, or if it's this clicker. So I think it's just, getting used to it, education, and just practice with them. There is a small delay when people hit the button sometimes. So they'll just need to get used to looking at that little screen and, making sure that it's been, it says okay and it has the 1 or the 2. The other difficulty was voters leaving early, leaving their clickers, heading out, and then rushing back in to try to vote for, the article that was being reconsidered. That makes it difficult as well for the check-in people. It makes it difficult for the voter who wants to get back in that room quickly. I don't know how, the voters maybe should just wait a little longer before they leave. Yeah, I think there's a few other things. The check-in, we did have 3 tables with 5 checkers. We usually have 4. Some of that backlog was just getting people to come into the lobby. And then once they were in the lobby, we were telling them there's 5 different channels. There's 5 lanes. So we had to continually push people, into the lobby. So maybe in the future, we'll have someone stationed outside to get people to come a little bit, to get into that lobby a little more quickly and understand that they can do that. And there's 5 lanes to come through. And, if it's going to be a big article in the future, we'll have 6 lanes. We'll, whatever we need to do. So that's my basic input for now.
Thank you, Julie. Just a quick question by me. How full was the auditorium?
That's a good question. I never got out there to see.
Yeah, I never did.
Heard that it was completely full, but that's just what I've been told.
Okay. Huh. Yes. Craig, Julie, thank you so much. Follow-up for Julie? Anybody follow-up for Julie? Or Mr. Shell?
Yeah, just, and there's probably no way for you to answer this definitively, or maybe even a guesstimate, but do we think that all 924 people were in the meeting when Article 18 was voted?
I don't believe so, because with the poll pads that we use to check people in, people were checking in up to 17 minutes before the meeting ended. So no, I think we were close to the 924 for that article, but I would have to check and see what the check-in times were for people. So I don't know that off the top of my head.
Thank you.
So to follow up just with Mike's question, that's the total number of folks that checked in at town meeting? The total number, no matter?
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you, Julie.
I can actually address that question because as we were distributing the clickers, at that point in time, I actually had 2 clickers that were returned. So if 924 voters came in, registered, received a clicker, I only had 2 returned to me at that point in time. There was one gentleman that it wasn't for him, so he left, and then there was another one that I found in the bucket. And during the whole process, I was trying to stay on top of making sure that the clickers, after they were returned, were always picked up. We started collecting them. And just to kind of go off track a little bit regarding the screen, this year we decided not to purchase any screens to display the voting because of this reason. We didn't want to go out and purchase a screen and say, okay, this is how we're going to do the voting and how we're going to reflect it. So as you said, I think maybe it could have been a larger projector. Maybe we could have used that option there with the 900, would have been 924 squares on screen. Actually, would have been 1,300 because we have to create the list of clickers that we think we're going to have before the meeting starts. So we could look at doing that. Other towns, once they get over about 500, they tend not to do that process. And I think you have mentioned that it would show how they vote. When we go to that large display, the participation display, it changes color. It doesn't show what the vote is. So we didn't want to, you can make it change a color, but sometimes that can sway the vote. People might sit and wait and not vote, and they're waiting to see how results are. And, oh boy, everyone's starting to come in green now. Oh, we need more reds or we need more greens. So the anonymity of that was what we were looking to do. So we will address the concern with the screen size. I think the audio, and I spoke with Mark earlier today, the day before of the meeting, I jammed another 100+ chairs into that building, into that facility. Now, we never got anywhere near maximum capacity for the main gymnasium, which is about 1,058. I had put out calculating with the bleachers and everything, I calculated that we were at about 800 people in that building. Now, normally there's only 450 chairs on the ground. We had over 500 chairs on the ground. So I think that also, with the large number of people in there, the sound gets muffled by people. As you know, we put in soundproofing in places to baffle out the sound. Maybe it was just, a lot of people in the building as well, but we can address that. Maybe some speakers and set up, in different ways. As for voting, I've had a look at how the numbers went, and the numbers went up pretty much the same trend as the clickers were being distributed. The first few votes, the test votes, I think were around 400 votes. As more people came into the meeting, the numbers started to rise up. Total number of votes cast, that being. And then we ended up at 883, I think was our highest number. Right after that, it dropped right off to 500. So we lost 300+ people during that time. And then it stayed relatively consistent as I was observing the turn-ins, because we tried to make sure that those clickers were not unmanned, so that, not that anyone do it, but we didn't want to have a situation where someone grabbed 2 or 3 clickers, ran back in and started clicking out, the clickers. To address one of the things in the email that Ms. Davis had seen, I personally collected, as soon as the first vote on Article 18 was done, a number of people left. They threw their clickers into the bucket. I personally went around and collected everyone that was possible. And then people were kind of like, oh, maybe there's going to be a recount, et cetera. I know of personally one person that came back in and said, I want my clicker back. The town clerk's office agreed and gave the gentleman the clicker back. But the other clickers were all in a box that I was carrying to make sure that there was anyone who'd left, their votes did not count. So just to clarify that. But, as I say, the numbers were relatively consistent. Went up as we got to Article 18, dropped off after we completed Article 18.
Thank you, Craig. Just a quick follow-up. But had you changed audio vendors this year, or was it the same company that we've always had for town meeting?
It was the same company.
Okay.
Yep, same company.
We had some trouble with the microphones from folks that when they went to speak, in the audience, if you will. I had a horrible time hearing them. I literally couldn't hear them.
Yeah,
I wasn't. And the microphone wasn't live when they started, so you missed the first few sentences sometimes. So
Yep.
That's critical in my mind. It's a town meeting. You want to be heard or you want to hear. So that's critical.
Yeah, I can bring that up with the vendor. And just to comment on the auditorium, there was about 7 or 8 seats available in the auditorium. Because I was trying to get people to not go into the slim gym and fit them in. A number of people didn't want to go in there and occupy seats because they felt like, well, I'm going to have the whole row stand up, typical movie cinema type setup. Everybody sits on the outside and there's 3 or 4 seats. But I saw about 7 to 10 seats available in the auditorium. Everybody who voted on Article 18, the initial vote and the second vote, there was a number of people in the lobby area, and I went around and made sure that they all got a confirmation of their vote. If they didn't, I had them walk into the entry to the auditorium to confirm that they got a connection. So, I felt very comfortable that everybody in the auditorium and everybody in the main gymnasium was able to vote.
Okay. All right, Craig, anything else you want to impart? Any other observations?
No, I thought it was a great, as Mr. DeCastro said, there was a lot of articles, and I think it was good. I think it went really well, and I like the electronic voting. I think we might have used it a little too much on those voice votes, and what we will do is we will make sure that we have a motion to move the question. I believe the vendor, he was typing them quickly and trying to get them done, but I think what we've learned is we need to have a stack of those ready to go.
Boom.
Boom. So, and then just pop in article, motion to move the question.
Mr. DeCastro.
Yeah, just 2 comments regarding the microphones. I know when I went down to the floor to speak in the aisle, people said they couldn't hear me. And I remember when Mr. Bergstrom got up to speak, and he had to move his microphone pretty close to his mouth in order to be heard. He was having difficulty as well. I wanted to ask, is the next time we do it, is the vendor also going to be present each time, or was that just for first time out?
That was just a one-off. We're going to work out the logistics of
So
who's going to run.
One of our staff people that would be sitting where he was doing that.
Yep.
I thought he did a pretty good job. Even if I had some difficulty reading up there. I mean, when I saw the first vote on Article 18, I saw the first number. I was having difficulty reading the second number, and I thought, oh, it passed, but I couldn't read up at the top where it said it failed. So that's all I'm saying. It'd be great to have one of these screens in front of us for the Finance Committee, the moderator, town manager, and the select board.
Yeah, I would like them to enhance that screen, and I'm going to put it in as a request. Is, on the top of the screen it said whether it passed or failed, and it was kind of, it's this wide. I would like it to be this wide,
Right.
Or a large notification of here it is, it's passed, or it failed.
One last comment. You did comment on Mike's and my observations about having the large screen with the all the clicker numbers on there. I do remember during the demonstration by Meridia that when the subcommittee for the Finance Committee was entertaining these proposals, they did make that point. You don't want to encourage or discourage people from voting based on what they see as the trend as the vote's taking place.
Mr. Shell.
I accept that. I'm not going away on having up a screen that is neutral as to how people voted, that shows somebody with clicker number 15 in his hand or her hand, they can verify up there that they voted, because the number is up there. It doesn't have to be, I don't know what, I won't get in the middle of the technology, but a confirmation that their vote has been recorded up on the screen is something that I think would go a long way to eliminating some of the concerns that were expressed various places.
I think that's a great recommendation, and we'll look at, as I say, we didn't purchase equipment because we were not sure how it was going to go, and now maybe this is a consideration where we have 2 large screens, 400 clickers on each one, and you correlate across to your number. You click it, and then it'll change color, and you know exactly that you voted.
Okay, anything else for anything? Just, in summary, it was a vibrant warrant. We did get a lot done. I appreciate Shireen and Dean's comments and all your comments on what we did accomplish. And, And, more to come.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes,
could just.
please, Jill. Yeah,
Yeah,
please, go
so,
ahead. Yeah.
We saw the tail end of the effort at town meeting, but there's a lot of work that went into actually loading the motions into the system. And I mean, that was all done by us and preparing it with the vendor and just all the work that the team has done. So I just have to put that out there. I think it was a very successful town meeting. I thought the months that we spent getting to that point where we had no questions on most of the warrant articles just proves that there is trust in public officials and that we were as transparent as we could be. So I wanted to put that out there. And then just so many people, the department heads and Shauna putting the warrant together, reviewing it, and just trying to make it as perfect as can be. And childcare and rides to the town meeting. I thought this, as our first town meeting back in 3 years inside, it got us back in the groove. So I just wanted to, I'm sure you appreciate all the efforts of the team, and I just wanted to acknowledge them. So
Well, Jill, I'm glad you made that comment. Those comments, I was I neglected to speak the same, but thanks to the staff and thanks to everybody that worked so hard for, ultimately a very successful town meeting, absent one vote. So anyway, thank you very much. You guys are great. Really appreciate your efforts. Mr. Nacastro.
I'm glad you said that because I was remiss, and I think we all were remiss in not mentioning the staff. Not just this meeting, and this meeting had a lot of challenges because of the electronic voting, but that's right. There's an awful lot that goes into this that our Chatham employees put in, and it's very much appreciated by not just us, but I think the voters in this town. Thank you.
Yeah, Dina, the warrant itself as a document is a bear. So anyway, you guys did a great job, so thank you very much. Okay, any other comments? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks, Mr.
Second.
Thank you, Shereen. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Good night, Chatham. Thank you very much.